So here in example 5, we have several representations of numbers that are complex and are wanting to change them into standard form. So in the first one, in part A of example 5, we actually want to start off by rewriting these things so that they show the standard form. So square root of -3 ends up being square root of 3i, and then we're multiplying that by um, square root of -12, which also ends up being a term with I in it, but 12 can be reduced to 2 square root of 3, and then there's the I. So as we continue with this one, um, we end up with um, being able to combine the root 3's to come up with a positive 3, and then that times 2 becomes 6. And then we end up with an I squared. But I squared, once again, is -1, so our answer ends up being um, -6. And so that's our first illustration there. For B, we have a situation where we're looking at the square root of -48, but the square root of 48 times square root of -1 ends up being, let's see, I see uh, 4 root 3, because 16 times 3 is 48, and then there's I. And then that's minus, and I see a 3 root 3i. And so there's that. And so these things can be combined. They're like terms. So we have 4 root 3i minus 3 root 3i. That just ends up being um, root 3i. And so there's the answer to part B. Now part C, this one's going to take that we actually multiply. But let's go ahead and change it into complex form with I in it. And so what we're really looking at here is -1 plus square root of 3i, and that squared. So that squared is going to end up being looking like this. And so we're going to end up multiplying those two binomials. So -1 times -1 is 1. -1 times root 3i is negative root 3i. And then I end up with root 3i times -1, so that's negative root 3i. And then I have root 3i times root 3i, so we're saying plus 3i squared. So as we clean this up a little bit, this ends up being a 1 minus 3. This part ends up being a -3. So there's 1 minus 3. So I really ended up with a -2. And then I have negative 3i minus 3i, so it becomes -2 root 3i. And there's our final form in standard complex form.